67. Peace as a Right. Chalcedon Report number 177, May 1980. A very common remark made by an angry or distressed husband or wife is this: a man or a woman has a right to some peace in his home. This is a routine reaction to marital problems, and also a typically modern one. We would have to call it, in fact, a Kantian reaction. In 1795, Immanuel Kant wrote To Perpetual Peace, a philosophical sketch. The essay is a classic of humanistic reasoning. Kant began with the admission that war is the natural condition of man, not peace. Step by step, however, he led his readers to the conclusion that peace is a basic human right. Kant was a leader in the shift of Western culture from the emphasis on God's law to human rights. Peace now became a human and public right. With that transition, Western civilization moved into an era of total warfare, perpetual war for perpetual peace, as someone termed it. Why? What was it in the Kantian perspective which has proven so deadly to peace? The reason is a very simple one. Peace is unattainable when it is regarded as a right rather than a duty, as something which should come to us out of necessity rather than something we must work for. Let us return to the illustration we began with, marital discord. Marital problems are built into the modern view of marriage, the expectation that marriage will give us love as our right, and more. People marry expecting to be loved, rather than to love, and, as a result, both are disappointed. Like all things, marriage requires work to further and enhance the relationship. Without work, we are sure only of troubles. The same is true of social problems. To assume certain things as our human rights ensures that we will demand them rather than work for them. The doctrine of rights thus becomes a major focus for social discontent, warfare, anarchism, and dissolution. Society is then faced with the maximization of demand and the minimization of work. It becomes a conflict society, and the harmony of interests is ridiculed. Law and politics are radically deformed by the emphasis on rights. Everything which men must of necessity work for is politicized. The assumption is that rights can be legislated into existence. A tragic and insane example of this mentality was the Kellogg-Briand Pact of Paris, 1928, which outlawed war and proclaimed peace. By August 1932, 62 of the 67 nations of the world had signed it. Only Argentina, Bolivia, El Salvador, Uruguay, and Yemen failed to sign it. The spirit of this pact was revived by the United Nations. It was held that the problem had been a lack of instruments for the enforcement of this great human right, world peace. In every country since World War II, political and economic legislation has furthered the abolition of peace by creating massive conflict. We are told by these humanists of human rights at the same time that we are assured that a conflict of interests is basic to human society. This means that only the states can, quote, enforce, end quote, the rights. The modern humanistic state, however, is the great enemy of man and the great disturber of the peace. Law, in the process, is made the instrument of rights. Fiat legislation replaces work as the means to legitimate goals, and men who suffer the consequences of the power drives, their hostilities to God and to man, and their willful lawlessness, cry out that they have been deprived of their rights. Peace as a right? No, peace is a moral duty. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14. Brotherhood a right? No, brotherly love is a moral duty. Romans chapter 12, verse 10, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 9, Hebrews chapter 13 verse 1, 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 7. The language of rights is alien to Scripture. The language of God's law and our religious duty to hear and obey is basic to it. No man has a right to peace or brotherly love, but every man has a duty under God to work towards these things and to live in terms of them. The doctrine of rights presupposes man is sovereign, and the world and God duty bound to give every man his rights. In a world where every man is demanding his rights from every other man, peace is lost and unattainable, and conflict is inescapable. At the core of humanism is this false doctrine of sovereignty and lordship. Ours is an age of warfare between the humanistic God, and it has no possible solution other than a different doctrine of sovereignty. Before God, all men have duties, none have rights, and all have his law to obey.